Hello, happy Friday, and welcome to today's. Hello, happy Friday, and welcome to today's Your Author program. My name is Phoebe Guillot, Senior Librarian of Teenscape, the Teen Subject Department of the Los Angeles Public Library, located at Central Library. And I'm here with my amazing colleague, Emily Meehan, from the Palms Rancho Park branch. It is our pleasure to host the Your Author series today. Please feel free to use the chat box to communicate your thoughts, comments, and questions at any time during today's program. Also, please email our Engagement and Creativity Department at ecdeppt@lapl.org to be entered into an opportunity drawing to win a copy of Watch Over Me by Nina LaCour. Put your author Nina LaCour /Watch Over Me in the subject line.
We want to thank our generous donors, the Lenore S and Bernard A. Greenberg Fund, and the Library Foundation for helping the library bring these amazing author and illustrator programs to all of you. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting young adult author Nina LaCour. Nina LaCour is the author of Watch Over Me and is the best-selling and Michael L. Printz Award-winning author of 4 critically acclaimed young adult novels: We Are Okay, Hold Still, The Disenchantments, and Everything Leads to You. She is also the co-author of You Know Me Well, a novel written in collaboration with David Levithan, as well as a contributor to numerous anthologies. Nina loves cooking, gardening, and day tripping through the ever-inspiring regions of Northern California with her wife and daughter. Welcome, Nina.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, both of you.
Thank you for being here.
Definitely. We were talking about it before the program. We just really love your work. It's so amazing, and it's just like waiting for your next book to come out. It's just, love your work. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your novel, Watch Over Me? We'd also love to hear you read a passage from the book.
Okay, great. Yes, I would love to tell you about myself. So I live in San Francisco. I moved here. We were just talking a little bit about the pandemic. We moved into a new home 3 days before shelter-in-place orders came from the city of San Francisco. So it's been a strange year for all of us. But one of the things that has really kept me grounded and anchored during this time has been my writing. And writing has been a really important part of my life since I was a little kid. It's kind of what I've always turned to in moments of quiet or moments of difficulty of any kind. I tend to write in order to figure out what it is that I'm feeling and to grapple with the big questions of life. I started off writing poetry when I was a kid and short stories, and then through college continued to write short stories and started a novel my senior year of college that I used to get into a graduate program for creative writing. And there is when I discovered writing for teens. I really loved reading books for kids when I was a kid, but for some reason I had never thought about writing a YA novel until I was in graduate school. And then once I started with that form, I really fell in love with it and really enjoyed going back to the teen years of my life and kind of using all of that material to tell stories. And so my latest novel is Watch Over Me. It's the story of a young woman named Mila who is 18. She has just placed out of the foster care system, and she's offered an internship on the remote Northern California coast in the Mendocino area. And her job there is to teach the young children in the schoolhouse that they have. The farm is run by this couple, Terry and Julia, and they have taken in a lot of kids from the foster system over the years, and they live on this small farm and they do their lessons and they learn to farm. And so Mila is really excited for this opportunity because she has endured a lot in her life and she's really looking for a place to belong and some stability. And so she accepts the offer, but she discovers on her first night there that there are ghosts. And so she needs to figure out, what's going on with these ghosts and how do they impact her own life and her own memories. So yes, I can read to you. Okay. I will choose just a small part. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna read the section where Mila first gets to the farm so that you can see what that's like. All right. So she's been driven to the farm by this man named Nick, who used to live at the farm and kind of is in charge of helping the new interns find their way there. 5 hours later, Nick turned off Highway 1 and onto an unmarked gravel drive. He avoided potholes for a quarter mile and slowed as we approached a wide wooden gate. For the goats, he said. He stopped the car, opened the door to climb out, and left the engine running. It was just before 8 o'clock and the sky was pale pink, and I watched through the windshield glass as he unlatched the gate and pulled one side open, then crossed in front of the car to open the other. Behind him was a field and a big wooden barn, some moss-covered boulders, 2 goats munching grass. Here I was. I had made it. Welcome home, Nick said. He made no move to open the door. I skipped forward a little bit. She's now right in front of the little cabin. He made no move to open the door, so I turned the knob myself. I expected the inside to be dark, but it wasn't. A skylight cut through the middle of the ceiling, casting the room in the same pink glow as outside. Nick tucked my suitcase just inside the doorway. My shoes were muddy from the field, so I set my backpack and duffel inside without crossing the threshold. I saw a rug, a twin bed with a wrought iron frame, a writing desk with a chair, a wood-burning stove, and a stack of cut wood. I've always liked these little cabins, he said, but I never got to live in one. They're only for the interns. You live in the house? He nodded. In a room with 2, you lived in the house? He nodded. In a room with 2 other boys. We whined about it all the time. We were total shitheads, but it was great. Now we meet up for vacations every summer and we always share a hotel room. I never sleep as well as I do when I'm in a room with my brothers. I smiled. That's sweet, I said. I'm going to head over to the house, but take your time. Terry or Julia will show you how everything works a little later. Okay, I'll see you soon. I waited for a moment longer there in the doorway. Then I took off my shoes, lined them neatly by the threshold, stepped into the cabin, and closed myself in. The rug was soft underfoot and full of color, greens and pinks and blues. And even without a fire in the stove, I was warm. I could have stayed there for the rest of the night, but they were waiting for me. Right, I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. Where did the idea for the story come from? What was it influenced by?
A few different things. So my novels are typically, there's like, multiple sources of inspiration, and they all come together and form something new. So for this one, I finished writing We Are Okay, which felt like such a personal and special book to me, and received a lot of really amazing recognition. And I was very intimidated about what my next book would be. I didn't want to let people down, and I felt like the best thing that I could do for myself would be to try something completely different. And so I decided I wanted to do a retelling of something that I loved. And I used to teach high school, and I taught a Gothic literature class in high school for my high school students. And so I started revisiting some of these books that I had taught and really felt drawn to at the time. And I landed on The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, which is a novella that is just so much fun. Like, there's a governess and she takes care of these children, and there are ghosts, but maybe there aren't ghosts. And, it might be all in her head, and it might be that she's being tricked, and it might be that there really are ghosts there. And I loved all of those different interpretations and all those elements. And so I thought that The Turn of the Screw could translate into a young adult novel very well, because a governess could easily be someone who had just graduated from high school and was then charged with taking care of children. And so I started thinking about that, but the more that I thought about it, the more the idea evolved and really strayed from the original material. And so I then started letting in like all these other elements and influences from my life. So one of the major pieces of Watch Over Me is that there's Mila's, present story, and there's also the past of what happened to her before she entered the foster care system. And that has to do with a man named Blake, who is kind of like, he's my only irredeemable character, I realize, I think, of all the books that I've written. He's a pretty bad guy. And the idea of him came from me living in a little house that was across the street from a lot of land that was owned by this man who had intended to build a house but ran out of money to build the house. And so it had all of these partially built structures on it. And he lived there, and people would kind of come and go. And it was right out my kitchen window. So every time I washed dishes, I was looking across at these people and wondering about their lives. And so combining those two kind of sources of inspiration eventually led to this story.
So you touched on this a little bit with Turn of the Screw by Henry James, but this is really your first novel that kind of explores the supernatural and magical realism. And so what inspired you to write a ghost story of sorts? And were there any other like scenes from movies or other stories that kind of inspired some of the moments of horror in the novel? Because I wouldn't classify it as a horror novel per se, but there are some scenes in there that are a little reminiscent of some horror movies I've seen.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It was difficult for me because I kept wondering, like, if I'm writing a ghost story, does it need to be scary? And if it needs to be scary, am I doing a good enough job? And I ended up deciding, like, it could be a moody, atmospheric ghost story instead of like a true horror, super scary novel. And so that gave me permission to not worry about being scary. But I'm always happy when people are creeped out by it, because I do find parts of it creepy, and I hoped that they would be. I read a couple novels. Well, I mean, so yeah, Turn of the Screw was one of them. But then I also read The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters, which is a beautiful novel, a very thick novel for adults. And it was a very informative book for me, because it's a moody, atmospheric, also ghost story, though not a ghost story quite like this one, but where things are happening and they can't be explained. And there are some very like jump out at you, scare you kind of horror scenes, but then like so much is just like the slow build and tension and anticipation. And I think that's the lesson that I took away from that book, was that the tension is more important sometimes than the actual thing, than the actual, scary parts. And so that helped me a lot. And then another major source of inspiration was the film Gaslight, because the Blake narrative, the past narrative, involves a lot of gaslighting in the original, the original meaning of that term that came from the film and the play. So that was another source.
Very nice. So Mila has positive experiences in the foster care system, both with her foster parents at the beginning of the novel and then with Terry and Julia on the farm. Why was it important to you and to the story to portray the foster care system in a more like positive light than we typically see in works of fiction?
Yeah, that's such a wonderful question. I'm sure there were a couple of different factors. One is that I tend to write books that do like lean toward hope, right? I do want people to feel hope in life, even when it's very hard. And the really hard story that I had Mila endure was the story with Blake and her mother in the past. And I wanted that to be able to really be the focus of the story, and for the rest of it to have to do with the fallout from that. Like, how do we heal from the traumas of our past, and how do we become strong enough to face them? So I didn't want to continue to inflict, terrible things on her throughout the whole book. Her first, like the foster family that we first meet is very good to her. They're very good to her and they're supportive and they give her what she needs, but they're still not they're not parents, they're not trying to be parents. They're providing her with a home and the necessities that she needs. And what she's really longing for is family. And so she doesn't get that with them. And she's hoping that she's going to get it at this new place. So that was one of the reasons, was I just didn't want to put her through too much if it wasn't important to the story. And then the second reason was probably just that I had when I was a kid, there was a friend of mine, his family would take in kids from the foster system, and they were a very kind family. And I would get to know the kids that they took in, because often they would go to school with us for a while until they were moved on to the, whatever was waiting for them next. And so I did see a model of a positive foster family in my childhood.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. So Mila in the novel is just aged out of the foster care system, and she's on the cusp of adulthood and discovering who she is as she goes to this farm. And what key takeaways do you hope that the readers of this book will find in her journey?
I think, so Mila's central thing that she keeps telling herself, and this was really present in an early draft and then got edited down a bit, but it's still very much on the pages, is that she really wants to be good. She wants to feel like she's good. She wants other people to see her as good. So many of her actions are, that's what they're from. She spends her day off organizing the closet that she knows that is stressing Terry, the foster father, out. And she always does the dishes, and she's quiet about it, but she's just trying so hard to be good. And she tries so hard with her pupil, Lee, who she's assigned to teach. And I think what I want, and what I want to convey through that is that it's okay to also be messy and also need things, and be angry when it's warranted, and be sad. And, and Mila does go through that process through the book. She unravels a bit, and it's through that unraveling that the real bonds that she finds come. And so I think that, I don't typically write with a moral or a message in mind, but they seem to emerge anyway. And so what emerged for me was really you have to be able to see who you are for yourself and offer your true self to others. And that's when that real connection can come. And we're all allowed our messiness and our flaws, and our neediness and all of those things. And we can be loved because of those things, not only in spite of them.
I really appreciate you saying that, because it's in reading the book, and not to give anything away, but the end, I got to the end and I found myself crying. I was it's just so powerful, such a powerful story, just such a, and so, and same with the other works, the other works have emotional impact, I think, on the readers. Many of your books deal with loss, tragedy, and healing. What draws you to these themes?
Well, thank you, Phoebe. I'm glad that you enjoy them and were moved by them. I think people come to reading for different reasons, right? Sometimes we read because we want to be entertained. Sometimes we read because we want to be intellectually stimulated. And sometimes we read because we want to feel things. And I tend to mostly read because I want to be moved. I want an emotional experience from the books that I read. And I want that catharsis, that a sad book that takes us through all sorts of difficult experiences with the character, and then leaves that character usually in a slightly better place after putting them through all kinds of trials. I really love that, as a reader. And so I think I write the books that I would be drawn to read. I write the books for, I write them with an audience in mind, of course, but I also write them for myself, a story that I want to experience, because it takes a long time to write a novel. And so since I really am drawn to the emotional story and that kind of arc, that's where I go. And then I'm interested in trauma and loss, because those things are universal, and I think we all have different degrees of those in our lives, but we all do have them. And I think that especially in times of deep grief and that sort of turmoil, people feel quite alone going through those experiences when actually they are some of the most universal experiences. And so I feel that putting that on the page helps to remind people that they are these things that we feel in our lives. Here it is, like reflected back, hopefully, and that can help ease our suffering, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
And this novel is set in Mendocino County, correct? Or Mendocino area, yeah. And you are a Bay Area. You live in the Bay Area. You live in San Francisco, and you're a Bay Area native, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, as a California native, I really love that your work is very California and Bay Area specific, but everything leads to you is LA focused, which I also love since I live here now. But your California setting is just really great for those of us that live here because it's described very accurately and vividly. And I'm just wondering about this novel. Did you spend any time in Mendocino while writing the novel? And what other types of setting research do you do for this novel and others?
Yeah, California is absolutely my home. Like for a while, my wife and I thought like we should move somewhere else for a little bit, maybe Oregon or whatever. And I was just like, when it came down to it, it was like, why leave? It's so much a part of who I am. We did do Mendocino research. It's wonderful to be able to choose places that I love and want to spend time in to do novel research. So we went to Mendocino a few times, and I took my family, but I spent a lot of time writing during that time. And it's just like the most gorgeous, haunting setting. It's so beautiful. For those of you who have never been, it's like from the Bay Area, you drive, 4 hours kind of up the windy coast, and it's just rocky and dramatic and foggy and beautiful and lush. It rains more there than it does here, and certainly more than it does in LA. And it's just this beautiful place, and it's pretty remote. And it feels like the town itself of Mendocino just feels like this little hidden place that's so different from anywhere else that I've ever been in California. And one thing that I did when I was there was I visited a flower farm called Nye Ranch. And I got to interview the farmers and look at the flowers that they grew. And I told one of the farmers what my book was about. And she said, she's like, that's so great because so many of the farms around here are haunted. And I thought, oh, well, great. So tell me about it. And she told me a ghost story of her own, like on her own farm. And it was so cool, but it just made me feel like I was living inside of the story for a little bit.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That kind of ties into one of our audience questions. Do you believe in the supernatural, like ghosts or spirits?
I don't have like any firm belief systems, like in any way when it comes to life and death and the supernatural. I'm really I don't know. I'm open to anything. Like I'm open to the idea of ghosts. I've certainly felt strange sensations or experiences that can't be explained. Especially once in a house when my family was house hunting. I went into a place where as soon as I stepped in, I just felt like everything had shifted, like the air was different. I felt a sense of fear that just increased until I got to a certain part of the house and I couldn't even stay in there anymore. Like I just had this overwhelming feeling. So I feel like there's so much that can't be explained, and ghosts and spirits certainly could be the answer for it. I'm open. I don't know.
Watch Over Me is your first novel since winning the Printz Award for We Are Okay. How has your life and writing process changed since then?
Winning the Printz was just this incredible dream that I never thought would happen. yeah, it was really wonderful, and I can't even describe it. I mean, when I got the phone call from the librarians who had chosen it and bookseller, I just I couldn't speak. I was just sobbing, like I like no words. I couldn't talk. So it was just amazing, and it's still amazing to me whenever I think about it and remember. And I've thought a lot about it because I do feel like we all need to find our own sense of like inner validation, right? Like we need to be able to believe that whatever it is that we do, whether you're a writer or not, like anything, any pursuit, we need to know within ourselves that we're worthy of it and that we are doing the best that we can and find our own inner value. And yet there's like nothing like an awards committee like that choosing your book and like them imparting that value onto it. And so it's something that I think about a lot and that I'm so grateful for. And I think that it has opened doors for me and given me a boost of confidence, but also it's given me plenty of reasons for self-doubt too, as I wonder if I'll ever live up to it again, not win it again, but like if I'll ever match what people loved about We Are Okay. I hope that I can continue to write books that give people that kind of feeling.
I think you're on the right track. With Watch Over Me, I would agree.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so you touched on this. I think you touched on this a little bit in the very beginning, but was there any like pivotal moment in your life when you realized that you were just destined to be a writer, that was what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I had an experience when I was a kid and when I was like kind of that tough transition from 8th grade to high school, where a friendship of mine that had been tremendously important was challenged by some personal issues that my friend was having. And I remember feeling like kind of left behind and really sad and confused. And I took that sadness and confusion and I wrote a poem, and I was so proud of the poem, and it didn't include any any personal details of the friend. So I was able to submit it to our school literary journal and it got published. And I remember getting some recognition from teachers at the time who really liked that poem, and that was wonderful. But I think more what it was like, oh gosh, I can take this really sad experience of my life and I can turn it into something and make art out of it. And then people can read it and they can respond. And then suddenly we're having conversations about this work that we wouldn't have had I not had that sad experience. And it just kind of showed me that writing was a way that I could make sense of my life and the things that happened and turn the difficult things into beautiful things. And then I knew I wanted to keep doing it. So from that point on, I knew I wanted to definitely be a writer. I'd wanted to before that, but I feel like that really solidified something for me. And then it was a question of what kind of writer I would be. And that shifted a lot over the years, but that was the beginning.
One of our audience questions is, it kind of ties into that, but do you have any suggestions for others who want to become better writers?
Yeah, I do. Here's your picture. Thank you, Bailey.
I'm Bailey.
Okay, so yes, I absolutely do. I have lots of advice. So one thing is like study the writers who you love, study their books and see what you think they do well and what you want to be like. When I was a teenager, I started reading my dad's books of short stories written by Raymond Carver, who was a big famous short story writer in the 80s. And I just loved those stories, and that influenced so much how I write. Like I read the stories over and over again. I studied them. I wrote stories that were quite derivative in style from his, but it taught me how to write in a way that is really valuable, like when you study the works that you love. So that's one thing. Another is that writing is so often about sharing. I mean, writing is a form of communication. And most people who write write because they want one day to be published and have somebody read something that they have written and respond to it. And so if you find anybody else who also likes to write, starting to share work early on, or even just talk writing, share what your process is like and what you feel like working on and brainstorming together, that can be incredibly valuable. I have a very long-standing writing group that I've been a part of for over 15 years, and other writing relationships too with friends and colleagues. We exchange work all the time, and that's just a wonderful way to stay motivated. And then the other thing that I would suggest is to really figure out what you do well, like find your own style. It doesn't need to be like a flashy, unique style, all, that stands out, but just your own. It can be a quiet style or a lyrical style or a descriptive one. Find out what you do really well and then lean into that. So don't try to write like somebody else. Try to write more and more and more just like yourself, while also pushing yourself to grow.
Okay. Thank you. What book or books are you currently reading, and what book would you recommend that you've read recently?
Okay, let's see. Well, I'm reading 2 books right now. I'm reading The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, and I'm also reading a book called Migrations by Charlotte Donahue, I believe. I think that's her last name. I should have double checked. It's really good. It's called Migrations, and her first name is Charlotte. And those are both adult novels. I'm kind of on an adult novel kick at the moment. And yeah, just loving those. I also read a middle grade book by Brandy Colbert recently called The Only Black Girls in Town, which I really love. Her new book, The Voting Booth, is also really wonderful. There are always so many great books to read, and I wish I had all day to read.
Yeah, so many books, too little time.
Same. What were some of your favorite books and authors as a teen?
So Raymond Carver, who I mentioned. I also, as a younger teen, I loved Walter Dean Myers. I read Hoops like a million times. That was one of my favorite books. I just think about those characters all the time still, and how just kind of formative that story was for me. What else did I love to read as a teen? I loved a book of I was really into short stories, like especially in my later teen years, and a book called it's by Thisbe Nissen, a book of short stories. For some reason, like Out of the Girls' Room and Into the Night is what it's called. And it just blew me away. And I really fell in love with writing short stories then. Also Alice Munro, I loved. I read voraciously as a teenager, and I would read the same books over and over again too, and kind of figure out what made them what they were.
Awesome.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we're going to take a few questions from the audience. Mm-hmm. We'll start with this one from Saltosis. What is your novel writing playlist?
Ooh, okay. Well, I do listen to music when I write, and I tend to listen to one song on repeat most often when I'm writing. And so they can change for different books. They can change for like different moods or characters' points of view that I'm writing from. In Watch Over Me, I listened to the song Sour Breath by Julian Baker on repeat. That was one of the main ones. But I tend to just kind of like to hone in on one song and not have a too complex playlist, because it ends up, if I have too much going on, it distracts me from writing. But if I have that one song going over and over, after a while, it just kind of, I'm able to tune it out, and I still get the feeling of it, but I'm not distracted by the words or the music, and I'm able to continue to focus. But that's actually another tip for writers. If that works for you, it can also kind of just send a signal to your brain that now it's time to start writing. Like if you just have a writing song and you're listening to it all the time as you're working on a certain project, I believe it can help you get into the book faster.
Okay. Lauren Spector asked, can you talk about the cover, the design choice, and the closed eyes, open eyes, and here's the cover. Yeah, and the artwork, just the book itself is just so beautiful. Just the artwork inside the book is so lovely. So
it's beautiful. It's beautiful, but when I first got the book, I love the cover, and then I opened it and I shut it right away because I wasn't expecting the open eyes. I got scared, and I every time I open it, I have to do it really slow.
I love that. Okay, well now I see that you think it's like horror because you're very easily frightenable. Okay, so for the cover, we talked a little bit about the cover with my team at Penguin, and decided that we wanted something new. We didn't want to stay with the same artist from the last book, even though I really love that artist. I felt because I was writing a ghost story and I had never done that before, that I should have it really have a new look to signify that I had done something different. And I started to think about covers of old ghost stories or Gothic novels, and I kept thinking about the Penguin Classics editions of books that we're all very familiar with, like the cover of Jane Eyre with the oil painting of the woman, or The Turn of the Screw with the oil painting of the creepy kids. And I wanted something like that. So I wanted an oil painting portrait, but then I also wanted to signify some sort of modern element, because I think of it as a modern ghost story is what I was going for. And so the designer searched and found this woman named Pippa Young, who's a painter in the UK. And she already had a series of paintings with the subjects with their hair going straight up like that in such an interesting way. And so she asked the artist if she would be willing to do a commission, and Pippa said yes. And so then we got to do the really fun work of making all the decisions, like what would this girl look like, and what types of flowers would be in her hair. These are anemones, which are mentioned in the book. The blue-gray was because of the fog. Like there's a lot of talk of fog. Even the blanket, like I got to choose like what kind of pattern would be on the blanket. And I liked this one because it was like waves. So it was really fun. But the initial sketch had her eyes open like this. And I really liked it because when the title was put over it, just like as a mock-up, her eye was open right here in the middle of the O. And I just thought it was so cool. So when we were choosing between eyes closed and eyes open, I was voting eyes open, but my editor voted eyes closed. And some of the other in-house people also liked eyes closed. So they won for the cover, but then they decided that they would add this cool element so that we could see. And now I'm very happy that her eyes are cast downwards on the cover. I think it's very lovely, but it was a little like more intense and creepy when she's looking right at you.
Yeah. Great cover.
Thank you.
Let's see. We have another question from Bailey Meehan. I'll be the first to submit an application to Nina LaCour's new friend. She seems so personable and sweet. So maybe not a question if you're taking friends. Bailey's interested.
Thank you, buddy.
Let's see. So just some other questions that we had. A lot of writers of fiction for young adults say they write the books that they wanted to read when they were teens. So what books, what did you want from books that you didn't get as a teen, and how does that inform how you write now?
Oh, I love that question. I feel like when I was a teenager, which was in the mid to late 90s, I was in high school from 94 to 2000, there wasn't the kind of YA that there is now. Now we have so many more perspectives, so many more YA books in general. And so I think, it would have been amazing as a teenager to have all of that, variety, and so now it's incredible, like to be able to have not only lots of representation from all sorts of races and ethnicities and cultures, but also so many, not only more queer novels, but like all aspects of queerness, and then all sorts of intersectionality everywhere. It's just like so amazing how that genre, I think, really leads, I think it really leads publishing. Like, I think YA novels are the most diverse and complex and intersectional novels that there are. So I would have loved to have been able to read more novels like that as a teenager. I remember one of the books that I didn't mention, but that was so formative for me, was Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson. And that was the first book that I had read about a teenage girl who falls in love with another teenage girl. And it's not a YA novel, but it's about teenagers, and maybe would have been now if had it been published, now, I don't know. But that book meant so much to me. And so I absolutely would have loved to see more of that as a teenager.
Very cool. Thank you. We have another audience question from, I think I'm saying it right, Salatosis. How did you celebrate after your book was published?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, this one came out during the pandemic, and so not very much, I guess. This one, Watch Over Me, was an interesting thing. Like, we had talked about doing a big tour with my publisher, and then the pandemic hit, and we had conversations, and that rapidly led to like no tour. We'll do virtual events only. And so it was a very strange experience, because usually when a book comes out, I'm out doing events and meeting people, and a lot of the travel that we do as writers is going to book conferences and festivals. And so we see lots of writer friends and make relationships with other writers. And so we have people to celebrate with whose books have also come out. And so all of that was taken away. And so it was a very quiet and strange thing, because I was celebrating that my book was out and doing all of these events, but they were from this room, like in my apartment. And then as soon as it was over, I was like cooking dinner in the kitchen and not really celebrating in the same kind of way. But it's totally fine. I mean, I feel so lucky to have this be my job and to be able to do this work. And the real joy of it has always come to me from the actual act of writing, that when it's published, and all of the things that go with that have never been my favorite part of it. Anyway, it's like living within the worlds that I'm creating and making something and then making it better has always been where I found the real joy in the work.
So nice. Thank you. We have another question from Caitlin. What feeling do you hope Watch Over Me evokes in the reader?
Ooh, what feeling do I hope? I guess catharsis is the feeling. Like, I want it to feel healing in a way. Like, I want it, at least I would like people to feel like seen and comforted a bit. There's a lot of hard stuff in the book. And so by the time they close the pages, I hope that they feel a little bit like it was worth it to read the hard stuff in order to get to the final feeling at the end. Although I will say that I didn't know that from the beginning as I was writing. I did entertain I did consider like a more open-ended, menacing ending, I guess I should say, like where Mila where she gains some things, but also the world of the farm is a more threatening world. And I did consider that and play around with that. And then I ended up in a more purely hopeful place, I guess. But it is still a ghost story. Like, I do still want it to be a little creepy. So it's not like everybody suddenly is, I was going to say, it's not like everybody suddenly dancing around, but everyone does dance around in this book. But it's not like all the ghosts are gone and all the pain is gone and everybody is completely healed. I think it's more complicated than that.
Definitely. Tara Smith asked, can you give us a hint of what you're working on now?
I would love to. Thank you for asking. So the pandemic, I wrote a ton. That was kind of my coping mechanism. I just wrote a lot. So I have just turned in, I think, what's pretty much the final draft of my first novel for adults that's going to come out in 1 year. And that was a 2-book contract. So I have another book to write for that publisher, for Flatiron as well, another adult novel. And then I also wrote the beginning of a chapter book series, which hasn't been officially announced yet, so I won't give you details, but that was a big surprise. I didn't know I was going to write a chapter book, and then it just kind of came to me and has been incredibly fun. And then I have a YA novel that I have just barely started, but is pretty real in my head. So I'll be definitely writing that. That's my first big endeavor of the year, is to get a draft of that down.
That's also exciting, and we're very excited to add them to the collection as soon as they're released.
Thank you.
April has a question. It's obvious you put so much passion into your writing. How do you inspire your children to become the voracious readers that you are?
Oh, that's such a wonderful question. I have one daughter. She's 7.5, and she loves stories. She mostly loves audiobooks, which is wonderful. And she listens to her audio, especially now in the pandemic. Like, she listens to audiobooks for hours and hours while she's doing her crafts and sitting next to us. Like, she has on her headphones and she's still listening, and she gets so swept in. And she's currently just completely obsessed with the Boxcar Children. And I just feel like all of the members of the Boxcar Children are just walking around with us in our home all day. Like, we talk about all the characters as though they're real, because they so are to her. So, I feel like it's, I don't know that I'm to credit for her, love of this, but, of reading, but we certainly have read to her all her life, and, are a family that values stories. And so I think probably, she's picked that up herself, but she also just has such a vivid imagination that I think reading really works well for her.
Very nice. Salatosis asks, who are your mentors, alive or dead?
Ooh, who are my mentors, alive or dead? That's such a good question. Wow. I guess what's coming to mind are really mentors who are alive. I am really fortunate to teach in a program at Hamline University in Minnesota. I teach in a low residency graduate program, and I work with just incredible colleagues, other writers, some of whom have way more experience than I do, and some of whom are peers of mine, but still feel like mentors in a way, because, they are there for me and they help me make big decisions and they guide me. And then there are these writers who've been writing for children for so many decades, and they are I just feel so lucky to have them. So I would say my colleagues in that program are my mentors, and I feel very lucky.
Very nice, thank you. And then it wasn't a question, but just a comment from Lauren Spector. You've been incredibly productive. Can't wait to read your future books, and I'm sure that we all feel the same.
Thank you. Yeah, and my goal is to slow down a little bit this year and try to, just breathe a little more and do yoga. But it's been interesting. I think, this time has hit people in so many different ways, and I think while some people have really had to slow down and limit the things that they do in order to cope with the times that we're in, that's completely valid too. And then some people have kind of gone into overdrive and worked, just produced a lot, and that has been my way of coping, I think, with what's happened. And so I think now it's time for me to slow down a little bit, but I'm certainly glad that I was able to write so much over that time, and that I have new books and new stories to offer.
We have a question from Mel Hernandez, which I think you touched upon earlier, but it's what is your writing process like?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so my writing process is very odd. It is I mean, maybe I actually want to recast it. Maybe starting today, I'll recast how I talk about it. It's very intuitive. Like I'm not an outliner. I don't start at the beginning of the book and write till the end. I just kind of feel my way through the story. And so sometimes I write, usually when a new story comes to me, it's like just in little snippets of dialogue or bits of description or a moment. And I just kind of start writing those down. And so for that YA novel that I have right now that I'm working on, but just in the very beginning, I have a document, and in it are just like 10 scene fragments, and they happen all over the book. Like I don't know where they are. I don't know where they'll go yet, but they're just little moments. And as I think about those moments and write more of them, I learn like what the shape of the book will be and what will happen, kind of a general sense of the sequence. And then I'm able to really start piecing them together as a story and filling in those different spots. So it's a strange way of working, but it's one that I have come to trust, because no matter how I've tried to change my process, I'm not able to. And so I've just decided to embrace it. And I've also learned that I revise in the same way, which is also very odd. Like I can have a whole plan for revision, but then I just end up going in whatever scene is kind of calling to me at the moment. And piece by piece, I'm able to get it all together.
Very nice. So Caitlin asks, what is your favorite genre of books to read and to write?
Gosh, I mean, I tend to stick to fairly realistic books. Definitely my writing. I mean, Watch Over Me is my first book that has elements of an unexplainable world. So I tend to stay pretty in the realism realm. And I would say that's true for my reading as well. But I'm interested in branching out a little bit. One of my favorite writers for adults is Victor Laval, and he writes horror novels, and I just love them. So I feel like I need to branch out a bit.
A question from Salatosis. Do you force your way through writer's block? Yeah,
I don't like to give writer's block a lot of attention or I don't know, importance. I like to just think. I have two ways of dealing with writer's block. One is that my philosophy on writing on my work is some words on most days. Like that's what I expect of myself, that I'll write some words on most days. And taking the pressure off of like, I'm going to write every day, or I'll write 1,000 words every day. Taking that pressure off is already immensely helpful to me. And I've come to understand that some days I'm able to write a whole bunch, and I'm in flow and it feels great. And other days I will kind of labor over a couple sentences for my whole time that I'm writing. And I've come to recognize that that's also okay. Like something is going on, for me while I'm doing that. And maybe that means the next day something will be much clearer. So that's one perspective on writer's block, is just to understand that there are good days and bad days, or productive days and less productive days, and not to worry so much when you're having a less productive one. The other thing that I have realized really helps me is to have a couple different projects going at once, because sometimes you do hit a block with one project and you just need some time away from it. And so then if you have another project that's kind of on deck, and you turn and you work on that other one instead, it can allow you to move forward in your work, even if it isn't with that one project. And then usually I find when I'm able to shift focus that way, the answers to that other problem become clearer to me, like once I've given myself a little break from them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that was all of our audience questions. So Emily, I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Yeah. So for just the last few minutes we have with you, we have some rapid fire round questions. So you can answer these as quickly or take as much time as you want with these. But the first one that I am extremely invested in is, what's your best Bay Area food or takeout?
Oh, gosh. I mean, there are so many choices for this.
I know.
Okay, so I'm going to go with my initial reaction, which is Soul Food, which is a Marin-based place. It's just so delicious, and you can't get it in San Francisco or the East Bay. So I think it remains like mysterious to me. So Soul Food would be my number one.
Nice. Okay. And then do you prefer mountains or beach?
Past me would say mountains, but I've been really into the beach lately. And especially now that I live in San Francisco, it's just so easy to go and just see the waves. So I'm going to say beach.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cake or pie?
Cake.
Okay. Morning, noon, or night?
It's so boring, but I think noon. I'm a person.
I mean, same, honestly. I'm not a night person. So.
I sleep,
And do you have a favorite guilty TV pleasure?
Ooh, okay, let me think. Favorite guilty TV pleasure. I mean, I don't know. I don't believe in feeling guilty about the things that I watch.
Oh, you go.
So, yeah, I'm going to say no. I feel pretty good about the things that I watch. I've been, as a family, we've been watching lots of reality cooking shows, which has been very fun. Yeah. I love a drama. I love Schitt's Creek. I love it all.
And then last one right here. Do you have a go-to karaoke song? I know we can't do karaoke in person right now, but maybe a song you do karaoke to in the shower?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to say Eternal Flame by the Bangles.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's a ballad.
That's a good one.
All right. Do we have any more audience questions?
No, it doesn't look like it.
All right. I think we're okay. All right. Well, I guess we can wrap it up then. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed this conversation with Nina LaCour. And again, we'd like to thank our donors, the Library Foundation, and our behind-the-scenes staff, and all of you for supporting the library. Remember, you can request books on lapl.org and pick them up at one of our 26 library to-go sites right now. Or you can use your library card to check out an e-copy or any other of our amazing online resources. And please make sure to join us for our next Your Author program with author Matthew Cordell, who wrote the picture book Hello Neighbor, The Kind and Caring World of Mr. Rogers. I love Mr. Rogers. That's going to be on Thursday, January 22nd at 4 p.m. And that will be streaming on the library's YouTube and Facebook channels.
Thank you so much. So much fun.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. It's fantastic. And I just want to give a quick shout out to all of our Los Angeles Public Library librarians who are doing amazing online programming. So please check out our online events calendar with all the different programs that we have going on. Teamscape is offering like weekly programs every weekday at 4 o'clock. We have book clubs, we have chess program, we have guitar and songwriting. We're also having a tea time program that's Tuesdays at 3. Just teams can log in and chat with each other and connect. It's a difficult time right now, so if you're craving that, you're a teen, you're craving some conversation, teen-led program. And we're also working on developing more teen-led programs as well. And then every Friday, we have a game day program. Coming up this next week, we have photography with Katie. So our wonderful administrative clerk, Katie, is going to be hosting a photography program. She's, studies photography and is an avid photographer herself. And so I would recommend checking it out. So just check out our programs at the events calendar, lapl.org /events. And thank you, Nina, so much. This was wonderful, such a wonderful experience. Thank you so much.
Thank
you for doing what you do. Your writing is amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. This was really wonderful. I appreciate both of you and everybody who made it possible for me to come. And thank you, everyone, for coming and for your wonderful questions as well.
Fantastic. Okay, well, that concludes our program.